Ohio State's defeated Maryland 8 consecutive times since they joined the Big Ten. I saw a stat today that Ohio State scored 57 points per game in those games. So it hasn't been real close, although Maryland certainly got real close in 2018 with a 2-point conversion that failed, that led Ohio State to a Big Ten championship eventually. Mike Locksley took over this program, didn't have a whole lot of success out west, but takes over this program after a stint at Alabama. And I think he had his doubters. I'll include myself. Not that I thought it was a terrible hire, but I just kind of questioned, okay, is this guy going to be able to do some good work at Maryland? And here we are after a couple bowl victories for the first time back-to-back in a long, long time, and off to a nice 5-0 start.
Yeah, no, we're 5-0 for the first time since 2001. So Coach Locksley has done a great job with this program. I mean, I think a lot of people had doubts with the Coach Locksley hiring overall, but overall what he's done to the program, he's completely transformed it. If you look at the win totals, every year he's actually added a win to his total win. So every year we've gone up at least one win. And last year we were at 8. And so this year, can we get to 9? Can we get to 10 wins? That's the biggest question mark for the Terps. But I think we're in a really good spot headed into the Ohio State game. I think our guys have confidence. I think we're flying around offensively and defensively. The only thing is we haven't really been tested. We've gone down early on in games, but the opponents that we've played, whether it's Indiana, whether it's Michigan State, haven't been the best opponents yet. So overall, this is our first real test against an amazing Ohio State team.
This is actually a question I asked of Mike Locksley at Big Ten Media Day, so I'll throw it up for you, Trey. This has been a team under Locksley, and even before that, when DJ Durkin was pulling in some nice recruiting classes that could match teams like Ohio State, and maybe match might be an overstep slightly, but we're really strong at running back, especially wide receiver, especially corner, and in the defensive secondary. Issues, not that they didn't have a player or two up front on defense or offensive linemen, but didn't have the depth, didn't have 5 offensive linemen, 6, 7, 8 offensive linemen, didn't have the trench play that you need to take on Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, those teams. And he felt pretty confident, which, again, what else was he going to say? That they could compete with those kind of teams, going forward, and specifically this season.
Yeah, overall, I mean, that's the biggest question mark for us. I think you pointed it out perfectly. We have the skill guys. We have the receivers. We have the running back, Roman Hemby. If you're not familiar much with Maryland, Roman Hemby was actually second on Mel Kiper's big board in terms of running backs. I don't know. He's kind of slowed down throughout the season. But we have maybe the deepest wide receiver group in the Big Ten, not named Ohio State. A lot of people think that. But the biggest question mark is, can we do it up front, whether it's the offensive line protecting. And we know how Ohio State's got some guys on that defensive line, whether it's JT or Jack Sawyer or Hall. I've heard they've been a little bit disappointing. I actually just got off a podcast with the Ohio State Locked On Buckeyes, and he said it has been a little bit disappointing in terms of their defensive line. But our offensive line, we went into the season, and it was our biggest question mark. Overall, we were unsure of what to expect, and Coach Locksley kind of said, we have 8 guys that could play. But in terms of me, I looked at it as, you know how they say with quarterbacks, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. So I kind of looked at it, that as the offensive line too, where he was like, we have 8 guys who can play. But I said, then we have 8 guys that can play. What are we supposed to do with that? Do we really have a starting 5 unit? And I think it's come together not bad. We have one really good player up front in DJ Glaze that's going to be an NFL player. And there's some solid players up front, but that's definitely still a question mark. And it's been okay in terms of pass protecting at times. It's been kind of on and off in pass protecting or run blocking. I haven't seen a ton of it come together at one time, but we'll see this weekend. We'll get tested against Ohio State in terms of our offensive line and even our defensive line. It's almost a whole new group up there, almost all new starters. So we'll see overall how those 2 groups play overall, but I think that's really the deciding factor. I think we can compete with, Ohio State. They got the best wide receiver in the country, but we have a top 25 wide receiver group in the country. So I think in terms of skill positions, we can definitely compete. but it's really the difference in the offensive and defensive line that's going to, I think, make this game.
We are talking Terps with Trey Moore. You can catch his work there at Locked On Terps. You see the Twitter handle right there. Maryland takes on Ohio State coming up Saturday. Buckeyes a 19-point favorite at home, and that's a noon kickoff on Fox. Taulia Tagovailoa, everybody should be familiar with him. There's only a few quarterbacks in the country that I can come up with that have been quarterbacking a team as long as he has. It's, this is 2023, and in college football, to be quarterback going all the way back to week 1 of 2020, he's got a ton of experience. Seems like he's eliminated some of the early mistakes that he made in his career, throwing a few too many picks, but definitely a skilled passer. We know what his brother's accomplished, and he's a fun player to watch too.
No, yeah, for sure a fun player to watch. I've enjoyed getting to watch Taulia play. He's arguably the best Maryland quarterback ever, and there's no one I'd rather go into battle with this week against Ohio State and having a 5-0 Maryland team and maybe Coach Loxley's best team yet. I think it's Coach Loxley's best team yet. So there's no one I'd rather go into battle with than Taulia Tagovailoa. And right now, if you look at the numbers, he's first in the Big Ten in passing yards, first in touchdowns. So he's having a great season overall. And I've said it's even a little bit better than his past seasons, but he has been in college football a while, but I think that helps us. I think he's experienced. I think he's ready to go. He's played this Ohio State team a lot, but I still say he's missing that signature win as a Maryland quarterback. Can we take down Ohio State? Can we take down one of the big threes and really make Taulia's career really memorable? Obviously, everyone's going to remember him having all the records in the record books, but can he make that signature win where the Maryland fans can look back at him and say, oh, we took down a top 5 Ohio State team and Taulia really made his mark there? That's kind of what I'm still waiting for. Of course, like I said, he has all the records in terms of passing yards, in terms of touchdowns. He's first in the Big Ten right now in all those categories too. But can he take down that team and have that signature performance and that big type of win is what I still want to see from Taulia.
Yeah, since they've reached that 7 to 8 win level here the past 2 seasons, they've pretty much beaten everyone they're supposed to beat, and then they run into the big 3 up top and aren't able to get the job done there. Although, the game that they played at the Big House last year, that was a competitive game. It was a game in which Michigan won by a touchdown. They were up by, it kept going, fluctuating between 1 and 2 scores there in the second half, but there were a number of plays, starting with the opening kickoff, flubbing that inside the 5 that basically handed Michigan a touchdown. There was an interception in the end zone Maryland had where the player's foot was barely out of bounds. Michigan had a trap interception that was a bit of a phantom call that I don't know why that wasn't overturned. So they played a really good game and lost to Taulia late in that game, right? The backup quarterback came in and threw a touchdown pass. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Billy Edwards.
Yes. Is he still on the roster?
He is still, in fact, in the roster. He's the backup, and a lot of people think he'll take over next year, but he'll have to beat out Cameron Edge, who's a talented redshirt freshman. So we'll see about how that happens next year. But a lot of people think Billy Edwards is the favorite to take over the job next year.
That's right. Billy Edwards. I'd forgotten that name since he had to take over for Taulia against Michigan and did a decent job. And then, of course, the Ohio State game. That was an exciting game, the most watched game of the week in college football, and back and forth. And Maryland had the lead at half, and Ohio State forged ahead, and it took a strip sack touchdown to seal it late for the Buckeyes. I'm looking at this receiver core, Trey, and you had mentioned that you think this room is a top 20 or 25 room in the country. Between Ty Felton, Jayshon Jones was a receiver that led them in receiving and yardage and so forth last year. Caden Prather comes in from West Virginia. What are the various roles of these guys? Who's the guy that's going to take the top off the defense? Who plays in the slot? And what are the strengths of these guys?
Yeah, so Caden Prather, I can start with him, transferred from West Virginia. He's 6'4". He's the guy that can kind of go up and get it type of guy, a 50-50 ball, but he's also a good athlete. he does a pretty good job of separating and getting open and just getting yards. And then Jason Jones, he's our slot guy, like you mentioned. He led our team in receiving last year, and that was with Raheem Jarrett and Copeland and Dante Demas. And so Jason Jones is really the route runner, the slot guy. I think he's Taulia's kind of favorite target. Mr. Third Down, I would say. We get the ball to Jason Jones. And then Ty Felton is interesting because Ty Felton has really came on this year. He's second on our team in receiving now, but the last 2 games he's led our team receiving. And then last game he went off against Indiana for 3 touchdowns and over 100 yards. So Ty Felton, the junior, has really came on. And then Octavian Smith is a deep threat. He's a sophomore, so watch out for him to make a play. He's the speedster of the group. He hasn't had a huge impact this year, but he's still young, so look out for him coming in. And then Tyrese Chambers was also another transfer that's been a little bit banged up and is off to a slow start. People thought he would be one of our leading receivers, but he's off to a little bit of a slow start. But watch out, Tyrese Chambers could make an impact against Ohio State.
Trey, as you know, the key to any game, among other things, would be putting pressure on the quarterback. And if you can generate that from 4, then you're in a great place to be able to cover and tackle in space on the back end. But if you can't, then you run that risk of, selling out against the pass and getting burned. So do you feel pretty good about Maryland's ability to create some pressure? And if they do, who would that be?
I don't feel awesome about our ability to create pressure. I think that's probably our biggest weakness of our team. I say our secondary is our strength, but I don't feel particularly confident. I actually think this is an interesting part of the team that a lot of people wouldn't really know, but our talented linebacker, Jayshawn Barham, I've said it on the Locked on Terps that I actually think he's our best pass rusher off the edge. So, a lot of the times Coach Loxley and the defensive staff throws him on the edge, and he does an awesome job at generating pass rush off the edge. But also a guy like Quayshawn Fuller does a really good job, Kellen Wyatt. But those are all guys that are kind of new starters overall that we have seen it a little bit. Kellen Wyatt's only a sophomore. If he can generate some pass rush, that could be big. And then Quayshawn Fuller has all the physical attributes. I say he's a pretty freakish athlete, 6'5", got all the size you want, but you wonder if they can get some pass rush from the defensive end spot. But I actually think Jayshawn Barham, who's our all-around linebacker, who's an awesome player, is going to be an NFL player. I think he's our best pass rusher off the edge. So I'll be interested to see if that's in the game plan. It all kind of depends. I've kind of related it to Micah Parsons. Obviously, he's not Micah Parsons or even close to that, but the way that Micah Parsons played a lot of inside linebacker at Penn State, but then went off the edge, is now mainly an edge rusher in the NFL. I kind of compare it to that a little bit, but overall, look out for Barham on the edge.
Trey, we talked about off the top the elevation of this program from a sub 500 team to 7-6 to 8-5, and now where does Mike Loxley take this team this year? And you'd mentioned, hey, it's been coming in steps, and the next step would be to get to 9 wins. Is that simply for you what a successful season looks like, or is it more involved than that, more complicated than that? Or is it simply, bam, we get to 9-4 with a bowl win, then I'm feeling good about making more progress?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's realistic to say that we compete for the Big Ten championship, like even Coach Loxley said before the season. But I do think it's a little bit more complicated. I'd like to see us compete with Ohio State, compete with Penn State, compete with the Michigan, keep at least 2 of the 3 of those games pretty close. I would like to see that happen. And then also going undefeated outside of those 3 games could be big. I kind of expect us to drop 1. But that's kind of overall what I think. I'm not sure if it's realistic to say for us to be successful that we're going to take down one of those 3. I don't know if that's just where we are as a program. But overall, maybe going undefeated outside of those 3, because I think we're going to be favored in basically every other game we play. But that's kind of how I see it, really adding on a win if you want to make it in simple terms. But if you want to make it in a little bit more complicated terms, competing with 2 out of 3 of those big games.
Something the team accomplished last year, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They did accomplish that last year.
Trey Moore, Locked On Terps. Check out his work right there. Trey, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking things down for us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on.